Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, welcome back. Today we are discussing the aspect of Khatm al-Nubuwah, the finality of the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we are fortunate to have Sheikh Mumtaz al-Haq hafidhahullah ta'ala with us, who is currently shedding some light on the issue of the Khatm al-Nubuwah and the finality and the final messenger, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We were briefly talking about Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, the Qadiani, the person who claimed prophethood, and we were looking at some of his prophecies. So, Sheikh, just to touch again, we were talking about his prophecies, and he was mentioning something about a rail track from Damascus going all the way from Medina, Makkah. So, perhaps shed some more light on this prophecy, or the statement which he made.
Yeah, well, like we were saying, that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani heard about the building of the rail link between Damascus and Medina, which
by the British.
Yeah. And he said, and he regarded this to be a sign of his prophethood.
Okay.
And he said that, if I can just quote from what he's written in his own, in volume 17 of Ruhani Khazain, page 195, this forms a part of a book within, which is called Tofa Goladwiya. And he says in there that ऊंटों को के छोड़े जाने और नई सवारी का इस्तेमाल अगरचे बिलाद-ए-इस्लामिया में करीबन 100 बरस से अमल में आ रहा है, because by the end of the 19th century rail links were being built all over the world.
That's right,
and
America
many Islamic countries.
That's right, yeah.
And in many Islamic countries as well.
Yeah.
But the fact, लेकिन ये पेशगोई अब खास तौर पर मक्का मुअज़्ज़मा और मदीना मुनव्वरा की रेल तैयार होने से पूरी हो जाएगी. And he was saying, especially with the building of the railing between Makkah and Medina, जो रोल दमिश्क से शुरू होकर मदीना में आएगी वही मक्का मुअज़्ज़मा में आएगी.
Okay.
The rail link which was being built from Damascus to Medina, that was supposed to come to Makkah. और उम्मीद है कि बहुत जल्द और सिर्फ चंद साल तक ये तमाम हो जाएगा. And he said, and we hope that this work will be completed within a few years.
A few years, okay.
तब वो ऊंट जो 1300 बरस से हाजियों को लेकर मक्का से मदीना की तरफ जाते थे यक दफा बेकार हो जाएंगे. The camels which used to bring the hujjaj from Makkah to Medina will become useless. और एक इनकलाब अजीम अरब और बिलाद शाम के सफरों में आ जाएगा. This will be such a revolution in the Arab world. और चुनांचे ये काम बड़ी सूरत से हो रहा है और ताज्जुब नहीं कि 3 साल के अंदर अंदर ये टुकड़ा मक्का और मदीना की राह का तैयार हो जाए. Because the work was being carried out at such a pace, he was hopeful this will be completed within 3 years. And when we see that this book was written in 1902,
so by 1905 he was this so-called rail track that was supposed to be built. Was to be completed. Okay.
Yeah, and then but we see now, even to this present day, that was in 1902 he made this prophecy. Now we're in 2011, 109 years down the line still. But if we can just say what he's written and how he tried to emphasize this point, and he was saying, और हाजी लोग बिजाय बदुओं के पत्थर खाने के तरह तरह के मेवे खाते हुए मदीना मुनव्वरा में पहुंचा करेंगे. Instead of eating this, instead of having to be pelted with stone by the Bidus, they will sit in the comfort and luxury of a rail.
Yeah, and eat very nice exotic foods.
Exotic foods. Yeah. And और ये पेशगोई बल्कि गालबन मालूम होता है कि कुछ थोड़ी ही मुद्दत में ऊंट की सवारी तमाम दुनिया में से उठ जाएगी. Not just that camels will become useless in the journey from Makkah and Medina, but camels will become useless all over the world. और ये पेशगोई एक चमकती हुई बिजली की तरह तमाम दुनिया को अपना नज़ारा दिखाएगी. And this was meant to sort of enlighten the whole world.
With its presence,
and people will see, and और तमाम दुनिया इसको बेचश्मे खुद देखेगी. और सच तो ये है कि मक्का और मदीना की रेल का तैयार हो जाना गोया तमाम इस्लामी दुनिया में रेल का फिर जाना है, क्योंकि इस्लाम का मरकज मक्का मुअज़्ज़मा और मदीना मुनव्वरा है. So to link Makkah and Medina would have been like linking the world together.
Because obviously they are the hearts.
The heart of the Muslim world.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he goes on to say the reason why this was, especially the camels becoming useless, then he goes on to say on page 196, सुनने वाले इस पेशगोई को सुनकर किस कदर वजद में आएंगे और किस कदर उनका ईमान कवी होगा कि जिस शख्स को अरब की पुरानी तारीख से कुछ वाकफियत है वो खूब जानता है कि ऊंट अहले अरब का बहुत पुराना रफीक है और अरबी ज़बान में 1000 के करीब ऊंट का नाम है and he emphasized on this prophecy of the camels becoming useless because camels form a very important part of the Arab way of life.
That's right, and if not even beyond that as well.
Yeah, and he says that anybody who's aware of Arab history, he would be aware that in और अरबी ज़बान में 1000 के करीब ऊंट का नाम है. And in the Arabic language there's over 1000 names to describe camels. और ऊंट से इस कदर कदीम ताल्लुकात अहले अरब के पाए जाते हैं कि मेरे ख्याल में 20,000 के करीब अरबी ज़बान में ऐसा शेर होगा जिसमें ऊंट का जिक्र है. The Arabs were so attached to camels that in his opinion, not that it really is, but at least in Mirza Ghulam Muhammad Qadiani's opinion, there were more than 20,000 couplets to describe their love and admiration and attachment to camels.
Just the camels.
Just the camels. और खुदा ताला खूब जानता था कि किसी पेशगोई में ऊंटों के ऐसे इनकलाब अजीम का जिक्र करना इससे बढ़कर अहले अरब के दिलों पर असर डालने के लिए और पेशगोई की अजमत उनकी तबीयतों में बिठाने के लिए और कोई राह नहीं. No better way to hit the heart of the Arabs than to make a prophecy regarding camels, that they will become useless. और इसी वजह से ये अजीम शान पेशगोई कुरान शरीफ में जिक्र की गई है जिससे हर एक मोमिन को खुशी से उछलना चाहिए कि खुदा ने कुरान शरीफ में आखिरी ज़माना की निस्बत जो मसीह मऊद और याजूज माजूज और दज्जाल का ज़माना ये ख़बर दी है कि उस ज़माने में ये रफ़ीक कदीम अरब का यानी ऊंट जिस पर वो मक्का से मदीना की तरफ जाते थे और बिलाद शाम की तरफ तिजारत करते थे हमेशा के लिए उनसे अलग हो जाएगा. Now Allah has mentioned this in Surah Kubirat, Idha Shamsu Kubirat, about Qiyamah, that when the Qiyamah comes, وَإِذَا الْإِشَارُ أُطِّلَتْ, not just camels, but everything will become useless.
That's right.
But Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani tried to manipulate it and to suit it and to build it into his own prophecies. And then this is very interesting. He goes on to say the fact that camels will become useless and the rail link will be established between Damascus and Makkah and Medina. He goes, Subhanallah, किस कदर रोशन पेश गोई है यहाँ तक कि दिल चाहता है कि खुशी से नारे मारें क्योंकि हमारी प्यारी किताबुल्लाह और यानी कुरान शरीफ की सच्चाई और मिन जानिबिल्लाह होने के लिए ये एक ऐसा निशान दुनिया में जाहिर हो गया है कि ना तौरात में ऐसी बुजुर्ग और खुली खुली पेश गोई पाई जाती है ना इंजील में और ना दुनिया की किसी और किताब में. The fact that camels will become useless and this rail link will be established between Damascus and Makkah and Medina, he goes, this is such a wonderful prophecy that there's no other prophecy like it in the rest of the Quran, no Torah, nor Injil, nor in any other book. So what he is really saying, this is the topmost priority in prophecy in the whole history of prophecies. So this was supposed to have come true by 1905, and when we look at it, 110 years almost have passed, and as soon as he made this prophecy, the British abandoned the whole project.
So how far did this whole rail system actually get to?
Well, there are still bits and pieces of the railing.
Okay.
It was being built, and it was being built, but then for some reason the British decided to abandon the whole project. And if people have travelled from Makkah to Medina, there are certain areas in which there is
some remnants.
Okay. But the main thing is it was supposed to have been completely.
Of course, that's
and this
what
was meant to be a universal sign for the generations to come. So this is supposed to be a unique prophecy.
Yes.
But even that didn't come true. And in another place, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani has written in volume 15 that for a man to fail in his prophecy, to make a prophecy, and then for that prophecy not to come true, there is no bigger shame or humiliation than a failed prophecy.
So what answer did he have for this prophecy? Did anybody question him? Did anyone put it to him, challenge him, perhaps? Or was there any sort of repercussion on his certain prophecy which he made? Or was it simply that he would just push things to the side.
When he was very quick to fire prophecies and to make prophecies,
But not to follow them up.
But not to follow them up. And then when people used to ask him and question him, then he would make other excuses and so on.
And when was this book actually written? This Ruhani Khazain?
Ruhani Khazain is a collection of his books.
Okay.
He wrote different books, but his followers, his Jamaat, have put them
Actually
all
compiled them together. Okay.
like an encyclopedia in 23 volumes.
So throughout the whole of the rest of his Ruhani Khazain and the other books which he's written, there's nothing actually following up about this so-called prophecy. It just lays flat.
He was very quick to pick on this, but when the whole project was abandoned, obviously he felt very ashamed and embarrassed.
So, are there perhaps any more prophecies? Okay, you mentioned one here about the rail track, and maybe are there some more perhaps which come to mind?
There are so many other prophecies, and in fact one of his other great prophecies, which he himself has said is of the highest caliber, has been...
Oh, so we have two high caliber ones now, one with the rail track and one with the...
That rail one is unique in the sense that he set himself this standard that this was the prophecy.
Right.
Because there was no other prophecy like it in the Quran, nor in Hadith, nor in the Torah, nor in Injil, nor in any other book of the world. So if any of his prophecy deserved to have come true, then that is the one that should have come true.
So this is the vice principle.
But he says this is of the highest caliber as well. But this is about his gradual spread of his message and how his Jamaat, his followers were meant to grow in number. And because Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani started his mission in 1880. He claimed to be a reformer.
A Mujaddid, as you rightly pointed out, Mujaddid reformer, right.
And then in the 1890s, he claimed to be the promised Messiah. And then by the turn of the century, by 1900, he decided to promote himself to being a prophet outright. And then obviously in the beginning he had a small following, and then his following did increase annually and so on.
But they were like the caliber which you had rightly pointed out, where he would rather be with animals.
Well, and that's what he thought of them. But then in volume 21, in a book called Brahini Ahmadiyya, volume 5. Now, this is very interesting because when he started out in the 1880s, he promised to write a book which would be in 50 volumes.
What year was that, sorry?
He promised to write a book about Islam which would answer all criticism on Islam that anybody could ever think about. And this book or encyclopedia was meant to be a solution to all the criticism and answers to all the criticism against Islam. So at the time, Muslims were going through a very difficult time in India. And so people were very enthusiastic and overjoyed that someone had taken it upon himself to satisfy the thirst of knowledge of the Muslims and to come to their rescue, as it were. So he advertised that he wanted to compile a work which would be in 50 volumes. And then he asked people to help him to sponsor and fund the project.
Oh, so the Prophet actually asked for, the so-called Prophet?
Yeah,
he asked for donations and sponsors,
And he asked for advance payment. So people paid him for 50 volumes. He wrote 4 volumes, and then called it a day. And then for many years, almost 20 years passed, for the next...
What year roughly would this correspond to back in them days?
Well, he started, by the time he published his first volume 1, Brahini Ahmadiyya, volume 1, that was about 84, 85. And then after that, he stopped writing any more books. He did write many books in between, but
this particular work which he was referring to, this
50-volume work, then the next volume didn't come up till about 1905, 1906.
That's about 21 years after.
21 years afterward. And then people asked him, how come you had promised us so many books and you stopped at 4 volumes, and where's the 5th? He was writing another book, but then he decided to change its name into volume 5 of the same work. And it is in that volume, in Brahini Ahmadiyya, volume 5, Issa Panjam, that he goes on to say, and if I can again read to you if you bear with me, and this is again very interesting, and then he goes on to say, this is page 94, he's talking about the fact, he's comparing his own Jamaat to other sects of Muslims. And he says, दूसरे फिरके जो मुसलमान कहलाते हैं रोज बरोज तनज़्ज़ुल पजीर होंगे. Other sects of so-called Muslims who call themselves Muslims, on daily basis they will decline and decrease.
Okay.
और ऐसा ही वो फिरके जो इस्लाम से बाहर हैं. Likewise, other religions and groups which are outside of Islam, they will also on daily basis begin to decrease, and until there comes a stage. Then he goes on to say that Allah has said to him, Ya Isa inni mutawaffika wa rafi'uka ilayya wa mutahhiruka min alladhina kafaru wa ja'ilu alladhina tabauka fawqa alladhina kafaru ila yawm al-qiyamah. This is a verse of Surah Al-Imran in which Allah addresses Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, in which Allah says, O Isa, I will take you totally, and I will raise you to myself and purify you from the non-believers, and I will make your followers dominant over the non-believers till the day of Qiyamah.
Okay.
So then he goes on to say, इस वही इलाही में ईसा से मुराद मैं हूँ. That in this verse, which is clear, Allah is talking to Isa ibn Maryam, Isa alayhi salam, the Prophet of Allah, the great Rasul who was sent to Bani Israel. And Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani says that in this ayah, in this revelation, Isa se murad main hu. That here Isa means me. Or tabi'een yani पैरों से मुराद मेरी जमात है.
Astaghfirullah.
And he says the people that Allah had promised will be dominant over the non-believers till the day of Qiyamah, because they are my followers and in my group. Quran Sharif में ये पेश गोई हज़रत ईसा अलैहि सलाम की निस्बत है. In the Quran this is referred to regarding Isa alayhi salam, और मखलूक कौम से मुराद यहूदी हैं.
Okay.
And the dominate overtaken group are the Jews, जो दिन ब दिन कम होते गए, who on daily basis went on declining. And then he says, बस इस आयत को दोबारा मेरे लिए और मेरी जमात के लिए नाजिल करना इस बात की तरफ इशारा है कि मुकद्दर यूँ है कि वो लोग जो इस जमात से बाहर हैं वो दिन ब दिन कम होते जाएंगे, और तमाम फिरके मुसलमानों के जो इस सिलसिले से बाहर हैं वो दिन ब दिन कम होकर इस सिलसिला में दाखिल होते जाएंगे या नाबूद होते जाएंगे, जैसा कि यहूदी घटते घटते यहाँ तक कम हो गए कि बहुत ही थोड़े रह गए. He says Allah has revealed this verse again upon him and referred it to him that his followers will increase so much, and those Muslims who don't accept him to be a prophet and remain away from his jamaat, and likewise other religious groups as well, they will decline and decrease on daily basis like the Jews, and to such an extent that they will become extinct, and finish completely. और इस जमात के लोग अपनी तादाद और कुव्वत मज़हब की रूह से सब पर गालिब हो जाएंगे. And his followers, his jamaat, the Ahmadiyya jamaat, which he called, or the Qadianis, they will increase so much that even by sheer numbers they will become superior to all other religions and all other groups of the world. And then he says, ये पेशगोई फौक अल आदत के तौर पर पूरी हो रही है. And this prophecy is being fruitful beyond expectation. And और अब खुदा ताला के फजल से तादाद इस जमात की कई लाख तक पहुंच गई है. Now when we analyze and see what's happening, yes, we do agree that the number of Qadianis has increased from a few thousand to perhaps a few million. Now the Qadianis like to exaggerate. They claim there are 200 million Qadianis throughout the world,
which would make it approximately 1/6 of the Muslim
population. Now, even which we know is a gross exaggeration, but even if we accept that to be true, there are 200 million Qadianis by these claims, but there's more than 1 billion non-Qadiani Muslims.
Of course, yes. So there's still the
and still there are 5 times as more.
Yeah.
And when we look at the total world population, which is almost 6 billion, the total world population, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani said on daily basis, when he came when he made this claim in the early 19th century, perhaps the population of the world was the total population of the world must have been 2 to 3 billion. And now the population of the world has gone up to 6 billion. So just as his followers have increased, others have increased even more. So now for him to make this, when we analyze his claim, he said others were meant to decrease in number, and to the extent that his followers were meant to meant to overtake them even in number and spiritual power as well. But we see that hasn't happened.
So if you look at the percentage, that there are obviously more of the other than these Ahmadis in comparison to these Ahmadis or these Qadianis.
Indeed. And so we see here again that this is a failed prophecy.
So analysing what he has mentioned and in regards to these prophecies, what would you advise to his followers?
Obviously, we've got, we don't hate Qadianis as such. We want people to understand the truth and to use their own logic and reasoning and their aql, which Allah has blessed them with, to see if what he said made real sense.
Yeah.
Now when Allah sent all his prophets, the prophets were initially opposed. They did suffer, they did go through rejection and hardship and trouble, but the eventual opposition was wiped out. When we look at Musa alayhi salam, he struggled. Fir'aun opposed him, but then Allah got rid of Fir'aun.
That's right.
When we look at Ibrahim alayhi salam was rejected by the people, by Fir'aun, by Namrud and his people, but Allah got rid of him. Nuh alayhi salam struggled for so many years. He did face opposition, but eventually Allah gave him superiority, and they were got rid of by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So and likewise with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the people of Makkah initially did not accept him, but later on all that opposition vanished, and people accepted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam within a few years. And Islam spread all over Arabia. Now when we look at what's happened to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, the people rejected him in his life, people rejected him after he left this world, and for more than 100 years even after him, people continue to reject him. And when we look at how Allah dealt with Bani Israel, in the time of Fir'aun, they were oppressed. But then with the barakah of Musa alayhi salam, Allah gave them a land of their own. The Prophet ﷺ, when he came, he was initially rejected, but then Allah favored the people and Islam prevailed all over Arabia. And now Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, he claims his brand of Islam is the real brand. So if it was the real brand, then this should have spread far and wide and been the dominant and representation of Islam, which isn't the case. 100 years have lapsed. Now when he came, Muslims rejected him, Sikhs rejected him, Hindus rejected him, Christians rejected him, Jews rejected him, the whole world rejected him. And just a handful of followers, just a handful number of people followed him. Now when we see what happened subsequently, the people who rejected him from the Indians, Allah blessed them with a land of their own, India. India gained independence. The Hindus and the Sikhs acquired their own state. Muslims who rejected him from the Indian subcontinent, Allah blessed them with their own separate land, Pakistan, and then so on. All the Arabs rejected him. Many of the Arabs at that time were part of the colonial system. Algerians, Moroccans, Tunisians were under the French. They were French colonies. They all gained independence. Other parts of the Arab world, they gained their independence, and so on. So but his followers, who were meant to be dominant force, in his lifetime they were a minority. When India was split up in India, Pakistan, and the Muslims migrated from India to Pakistan, then the Qadianis or Ahmadis followed them as a minority. They settled in Rabwa near Chiniot, and where they lived as a minority, and to this day those who live there still live as a minority. They suffered in different ways. Then many of them, they left Pakistan, came and settled in England, where they live again as a minority. So over 100 years have lapsed, and they continue to suffer in this manner. They don't have a land of their own, they don't have a status of their own. And so this should
make more prophecies than failing.
More failings than prophecies coming true. And so it should give the Qadianis or the Ahmadis this opportunity to think and ponder that if their prophet or their founder was a man of his word and a truthful person, then the promises he had made them, that they were meant to become dominant, they were meant to rule, they were meant to they were meant to be the force to be reckoned with, then
And
none
none
of that
actually
has
came
happened
apparent.
true. And to this day, they continue to suffer. And so now, this should in itself be enough. 100 years have lapsed, and there is still no end in sight to the rejection that these people continue to suffer. And in Pakistan, the parliament has declared them as a non-Muslim minority. Throughout the Arab world, they are recognized as non-Muslims.
Okay.
And so now people should accept the fact that real Islam is in accepting Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the last and the final prophet of Allah. And anybody who makes a subsequent claim to being a Nabi can only be a liar.
Yeah,
can only be a liar.
So here we have, viewers, in regards to the Khatm al-Nubuwwat and the finality of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his message. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.